Evaluating the join of those three things. Pretty neat. Step, constant, join. So that join, which was grabbing those three things, will end up producing that. So that's a really neat debugging stepwise trick. And then, so you can then end up seeing, goes through. So just to show that a little bit more, or use equals maiden. Run that. And so as we step through, we can see the first one. And while it's processing our second name, or name one, it goes, well, that's neither the official or maiden, so we end up with false. So that gets excluded. The next one, so that's not an official. It is a maiden, so therefore the or is true. So therefore our where returns those two. So it's a real visualization to help you debug and extract through it. So I only finished this yesterday, so it's not in the live version that you can play with, but that's what we're there for. And so once again, when you get to the end, you get your two results that you expect. So people think that that's a good addition? Yeah, think you might use it? Yeah, excellent, lots of nods. So that's all I wanted to show for me showing you stuff and explaining stuff that's coming. So now's the part where you get to say, is there something that you want to look at, an expression that you want help with to try something out, or am I just going to pick something and make it up and get you to try stuff out? What would we like? So, try something out? All right. Well, I just happen to have some boring ones that's also in the background. So, has everyone actually got the lab open that they can try out? Yep. All right. So how about we create a search parameter? So I'd like people to create a search parameter. So go to the lab. So FHIRPathLab.com. We've got our the default, which has got our patient. And let's say we want to go and extract out the medical record number. So the MR number. Is that a good start point? Yep. All right, so clear. So who wants to suggest what should we start with for our expression? We want to start with patient, so we'll have to run that. And then dot identifier. Yep. Dot value. And run. So there we go. Is that a win, or are we missing something? We need a where. Where am I going to put the where? So we need to put it in here. So we need a where to say. So note, white space doesn't matter, so it's perfectly fine to do things like that if you want to make the expression more clear. Now to get at our specific MRN, so we're going to want to walk into our type. So type. Now what? So I've got type dot coding dot code equals MR. Is that going to do what I want? Yep. Yeah, I'm still getting my value, so that's kind of cool. So what's missing? So now I'm going to flick this over to the Filey engine. The Happy engine will probably do the same thing. Now see, it's giving me a nice message. So the .NET and the Java engines have a static validator in them that'll check and actually give you hints about what might be potential issues with your expression. So in this case, it's saying the equal operator, which is this little fella, it doesn't work. It can give you unexpected results if you've got a collection. So just to show you what that could be, so let's say I had two codings in there. So with a local version of the same thing. So this might be example.org/demo. And now I run that, I get no result. So that's because this operator is not returning because I've got a collection here. So what do I need to do to resolve that issue? So this is pretty common. Martin, he's bloody cringing over here saying, Brian. Is there an any? Well, this is kind of cool. Can we go any? So there's an any true, so that's kind of pretty close. There is an exists operator, and so that's pretty close. Yep. So the other way of doing that is, of course, a where and dot exists, and run that. And what have I done to myself? Always fun, live. Well, I still have my Wi-Fi, so it's not that. So there we go. So we have actually calculated that out pretty cool.
You can also do the contains, right? Like get your other codes and then check the contains.
Okay, yep. So we could do, actually, before I jump in, so that's a contains, I like that. But what else am I missing here? So I'm missing system. So if I had MR, so this wasn't MR, this was IHI or something, which isn't that. I run it and it's still giving me that result. So what we are missing is exactly that, is system equals and that. So very good. So let's put that back in and run that. It goes away, excellent. And if I switch this back to MR and run it, there we go, we get our result back. So that's kind of cool. So yes, so the other way that I see this done incorrectly is people just doing that type.coding.system and then repeat it again. And so don't do that. Yeah. So your other suggestion was where contains. So you could do something like type.coding.select system and pipe and code. Hang on, what have I done? Oh, no. System and code in, is that one? No, the other way around, isn't it? Yep. Where our long string what the pipe MR in, this is not how I would do it, but but so that from a performance-wise, probably wouldn't be terribly different, but it's clearer the other mechanism. Yeah. Yeah, so yes, that string concatenation would happen, and that could take a little bit of time, but it's also sort of okay. So we're pretty cool that they all sort of worked pretty reasonably. All right, so next up, let's create an invariant of some sort. All right, I want to do an expression. So let's hide away the answer. So our patient, do they have a birth date? Our default one. Yes. All right, I want people to create an invariant. So from our default.
Don't you have to use usual parameter because the patient may have in the FHIRPath expression because the patient may have older identifiers in the same system.
Yep. So yeah, you can. So that was just a first cut. You could add extra things in like checking is the use there. So if was there a specific one or is it expired? So has the date changed and gone out? So yeah, feel free to add in those extra things. But yeah. And yeah, often you will do things like dot first. If you just wanted to have one of them to guarantee you're always going to have one. So something with FHIRPath, everything is a collection. So even something like birth date is a collection. That seems weird, but the input might be multiple patients, so out of a bundle. And so you'll get multiple properties. So that's kind of cool. Okay. So birth date. So birth date. So let's create an expression that validates that our birth date, let's go to where that is. So nifty little target down here to actually take you from there into where your thing is. So if you've got a really big resource, super useful. And yeah, love it. So I want to create an invariant that checks that the birth date and the birth time extension aren't. So what I want to get out is if this says 73, so like I want an invariant that will fail if I've got 73 here and 74 there. Yep. So what am I going to start with? So people are going to, so the first thing I expect people to do is they're going to go dot substring thinking, oh, yep. Well, maybe something like starts. So let's get at the extension. So first we need to get at, so let's just make sure that we can get at both fields. Birthdate dot extension, and then we want to get to the actual extension. So here's our extension, let's just check. Okay, so we can get at both things, and we don't just want to get that, we want to get at the value. So now just a tip for people, note that that says dot value, even though in JSON it's thing dot value date time. So if I put date time and run that, it'll tell you, yeah, you've said value date time, remove it, that's not cool. Why I point that out? Because if you run that with the FHIRPath JS engine, it goes, here you go. Because that was the original definition of FHIRPath version alpha or whatever it was. That's the way it was. So it just happily did that. And particularly with FHIRPath JS is they don't, it's not just they, it's FHIRPath itself doesn't care about an object model, but when we impose FHIR into that FHIRPath context, that's how you define those multiple types on a single property. So that's just a quick tip. It's always a good example when you're doing that to make sure that that's cool. Okay, so here we go. So let's say, is that going to work? Let's see. It's going to go, no, you got potential collections here. Okay, so let's pretend like that's not a thing. Is that going to work? Okay, that's true. Well, they aren't equal, but we want to make sure that it starts. So let's try our next obvious thing. Does that starts with, and let's try this out. Is this going to work? Does that feel like that should do what we want? Or is there going to be some issue? What's it going to complain about, if it's going to complain? I haven't said go yet. It's the wrong type, so starts with. So if I look at the spec, so note the little tooltip that pops up takes you to the spec. We can look at the spec, starts with, takes a string, and it runs on a string. And our particular sample here, that's going to be, remember if we saw them before, they were both a date. So just to, we can always do a dot trace. So BD, and actually, so we'll do that. And this will go trace BDE. Next, yep. Now let's run that. And it's going to say, no, starts with, needs a string. So our next up, what do you think we need to do? We need to turn it into a string. Let's see, does that work? And run that. Cool. But did it actually work? Let's see. 74, run. Cool. So did that actually work though? I don't know, I'm thinking about it myself, to be honest. Because this has got our time zone on the end there, but dates don't have time zones, so we haven't violated anything there. That all feels right. So I think we're actually pretty good. And so even if I had something like I only have 1974, which is valid, because dates can only have a portion of it, so we can run that. We're still good. Let's say that was 1975. That's cool. So yeah, that's cool. So what else could be there? Okay. All right, I'm gonna do that. So now I've taken away the birth date. I've just got this extension, so I don't have that. Is this expression going to return true or false? It's going to be false. So I got one for false. I got anyone for true? I got one for false, one for true. Anyone for an empty collection, so no result. So that's a cool thing. So FHIRPath is 3-value logic. So things can be true, things can be false, or you can have an empty result because you had, if I go specifically to, it starts with, we're going back here, so returns true when the input string is the match. Yeah, that's cool. If you have an empty string, the result's true. If the input is empty, the result is empty. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So in this particular case, we're starting with birth date. We're going to our extension. We're going to our value. We're going to first. So this is all going to have a value. Gee, it'd be nice to have a debugger to step into that and see what was going on. But anyway, that's a story for later. Our toString we still have. So we're still fine at this point. We've still got a string, but our input parameter here, so that birth date doesn't exist. So will our toString. So let's have a look at our toString. So our toString, if the input collection, is that big enough? Converts to string to string. So the input collection, so if the input collection is empty, the result is empty. So our sample here, this is now empty. So I think what we'll end up is getting an empty set, which is what we did. So that was the big flag to say, yeah, be careful because stuff can be empty And now what the validator would do with this is when the validator processes an invariant, it comes up and says the result has to be true. So if you get an empty set like this, that's a failure. So that's not a, oh, I didn't evaluate the rule, I'll let it pass. That's a, it did not explicitly return true. And if you've got cases like that, you can do things like exists or all true to try and make that pop up. So all true will always evaluate. So specifically looking at that, go off to the spec, loving the shortcut. And yeah, so it says all true. And where's the if it's empty? If the input is empty, the result is true. So that's the kind of get out of jail free card. So kind of neat. So yeah, so I don't know that it would be valid for you to end up with having a birth date extension with no thing. That would be, but anyway, that was a whole point. And I got a big 10-minute warning, so. Cool, what did I actually have in in my cheat sheet? Interesting, so what I'd, that's barely coming up, but. So that's what I'd created. So as my invariant, interestingly, I had the context. So that's another thing that's worth knowing. If you've got invariants that are on a particular property, normally instead you would take that and put that into the context and then use that. And so in this case, it would be $this or just straight out to string and then run that and you get that evaluation. So yeah, particularly, so this .all true trick is really important if you're at the root of an object. So you're putting the invariant right at the top. So if you're doing a questionnaire that wants to make sure you had at least 10 items for whatever reason, you can make sure you deal with that. But if you want to have it on a specific value, so if you wanted to have all telecoms having a specific value, then you would do that. So let's just do that as another test experiment. So let's make sure that, what does our test patient have? Telecom. So let's create an invariant that ensures that all telecoms have a value. So I can go telecom, value, dot exists. Does that sound like a decent expression? Yep. So that's. Wow. Cool. Yes, it's still, but I was just pointing out that, yeah, it actually tells you that values doesn't exist on contact point. So nor does value S. So that's why I encourage using either the FHIRly or the happy engines, because they'll tell you that properties don't exist, which is really cool. So in this case, we can see that yes, false. So when it's evaluating that one, that's right, that's right. So pretty simple. Did we end up with any? Ooh, that's a good one. So we'll finish off with that. So that was a decent example. So having value exists, that's pretty normal. Having telecom. You could also have, if you had specific formats, so you could do something like value.exists and value. Anyway, you could do where clauses or what have you. So I wonder, was that in my actual set of cheat sheets? Correct expressions, invariants. No. So the question was, how can I calculate, I want to create a search parameter on age. Was that the sample? Yeah. So calculating age is not so simple, but we can go birth date. Okay, so here's our birth date minus today. Execute. That's a coming feature. So you'd end up having to do your split. And I think, we ended up... Those haven't been added yet either. So that's another set of new features that have been added to the spec. So you end up having to go things like substring. Oh my God, do I really have to do this? Dot to integer. Hey. Sorry, what was the question?
Can you do substring on a date?
Cool. So can you do that? Oh, I can't do that. Hang on. Where's substring? There it is. I just had the spelling wrong. But no, I can't do that because it's not a string, so I have to do it up to string. And you get the idea. That's getting really painful. It's physically possible because I can then go dot to integer, run. So now it's an integer, so I can then do the same thing on the today function and then subtract, and it's getting all hideous. But there is upcoming features to be able to do straight comparison. So just like I tried to do, which failed, minus today, you should be able to do that and then work forward from that. So that's kind of cool. But the next question which I wanted to point out, with search parameters are pretty much always evaluated on storing. So when I save the patient, it'll evaluate all of these expressions and store them in an index. So if you store that calculated age, then a year passes, that's now stale, yuck. So don't do things that are time dependent or dependent on something outside. So thank you for that little prompt. And I think we're sort of at time with that. So I hope that's been informative for people and you've been able to have a bit of a play, see some of the common traps that you'll get with FHIRPath and learnt a little bit about some cool tools. And I'm hoping that debug experience that you sort of saw here comes out fairly soon. I'm happy with how it's working from a UI perspective now. But yeah, when I was running it, the back end was having some fun. So I didn't want to deploy it before, because it's going to annoy everybody. But yeah, and that will be coming to, at the moment, it's the Firely engine, but it will be getting into the Happy engine and also the FHIRPath.js engines. So, cool. Well, then I will let you get to your lunches. So thank you.